So today's webinar is, again, one of the more important ones that you can ever watch. I'm going to talk to you about how people address the stress associated with working in law firms, how you can actually have a better life, not get divorced, not have psychological problems, and a lot of other similar things that I've watched over the years that work very well for attorneys and have drastically enabled people to succeed. And so it's about also how hard you need to work, but it's also about how to deal with the stress and the pressures associated with being an attorney. And pretty much anywhere that you work as an attorney, there's going to be this sort of stress. There's always a pressure to bill a lot of hours. People that bill a lot of hours get ahead. There's a lot of stress associated with most practice areas because there's deadlines. There's your many bosses. For example, if you're a litigator, your boss is the court, the people you work with, your partners, the clients. And so it can be really one of the most stressful professions imaginable. So I'm going to talk to you about how not to fail in it because of all the stress. I'm going to talk to you literally about how not to die, how not to get divorced, and the things that I've noticed that people that succeed at a very high level do. And again, a very important webinar and something that I think is going to help you a great deal. I'm going to start off and I'm going to present the webinar, and then after the webinar, I will take questions about pretty much anything that you have, whether it's related to this or any questions about your career. So lots of attorneys in large law firms, especially, they reach kind of a breaking point, and that means that they fail, they quit. Some of them have very serious psychological problems, and a lot of them even die, even very young. I've seen tons of attorneys that I've known that I've worked with. I might have started working with them when they were like in their 20s, and then by their early 40s, they die. And it doesn't really have to be that way. It's about kind of understanding the lessons I'm going to talk to you about today. Formerly been in the self-improvement industry. I'm very interested in this topic. I've studied attorneys for years, and I've watched the ones that are able to be happy and succeed. And then I've also seen a lot of people fail. And I see people fail when I look at resumes every week and I talk to people and explain to you what happy, the ones that are happy and successful do, so you can do the same thing too. Recently, I've, met, I had dinner with some attorney couples in the past, and, one of the, something that happened with this attorney is he began, just basically right away for, how much he hated being an attorney. He spoke openly about his disdain for his partners and how much he had to work. And, at first it seemed like just kind of a typical vetting session. So when I meet attorneys, especially a lot of older ones too, that are partners and very successful partners, when you meet them, they kind of they talk about how much they dislike the practice of law. But this guy was literally, when he stood there, frozen in his chair, and behind his chair, he was unable to sit down. He said the room was spinning, he was afraid to move. And it turned out that he'd actually been drinking since early that morning, and people didn't realize it. And then he was taken home, and his behavior just kind of escalated. And then he got in this huge fight with his wife and removed his T-shirt and left the house and walked down the road before, over an hour before someone found him. And then this kind of behavior may seem a little extreme, but it's the kind of thing that I see kind of on a regular basis from people. And previous examples, I've spoken the past week with many attorneys that are kind of at their wits' end. I spoke to another one that was fired for only billing 1,800 hours during her first year of practice. She was told that by the firm that she was like the least productive associate, and apparently that was because she was very efficient, and she'd gone to, and so the fact that she billed 1,800 hours shouldn't have been a big deal, but she got her work done very quickly. And this particular attorney had graduated, from a major law school, had got a job, at a top firm, had less than 2 years of experience. And when you get fired from a job, it becomes very difficult to find a position, because if you're fired, then you're obviously competing with people that currently have jobs. And so this is someone that, did extremely well in law school, and then all of a sudden, was out, working, no longer working at large law firms and quitting. And this sort of thing, is sad because law schools don't teach you anything about what it's like to work in law firms. They just teach you, basically how to, read cases and whatever. Another attorney I decided to talk to had been first in his class, and he was, in a major top law school, top 14 law school. And he was actually, he felt that partner was giving him work to do that was unnecessary, building, working on something that didn't need to be done because the answer was kind of very obvious. And then the same guy, he ended up, quitting the practice of law. He told me that because of all the stress that his father had actually committed suicide, he felt that he was going to end up, the same way. And to me, that was very upsetting because I see people like in this kind of role, and I just kind of sat in my office, like, feeling very badly for him, staring at the wall. And this isn't right. I hate it when people go off the deep end. I'm always encountering people that are at their breaking points. And when I talk to people, they're depressed, they have health issues. Some of them even hint that they want to kill themselves. I've never had anybody I know kill themselves. Actually, I did. And then start abusing substances and so forth to cope with the pain and the stress. And so, what I've seen compared to people in other professions, attorneys have more issues with physical health, emotional stability, like substance abuse, marriages, and keeping marriages and relationships together than probably any other profession. And so, even though this is very demanding, and there are certainly, ways to, not everyone can be cut out for this level of stress. And by the way, I mean, a law firm is only one practice setting too, which is important to understand. There are many different practice settings like going in-house and so forth that may not be as stressful. And then at the same time, there are many types of firms that aren't as stressful, and there are also many practice areas that aren't as stressful, like tax isn't stressful, trust in estates isn't stressful, but you can go into different practice areas, you can work in different practice settings, but you can also crack the code of, what to do when you work in a law firm, and there's ways to do it where you're not going to die prematurely and where you're not going to go crazy and you're going to be very, very successful. And why do I talk about being successful in a law firm? The reason you want to be successful in a law firm is because if you go in-house, people typically will lose their jobs after a few years for a variety of reasons. Most in-house jobs aren't stable. If you go to work in the government, as you're seeing right now, those jobs used to be stable, but they're not. We get countless resumes from people in Washington, D.C. and the federal government that have lost their jobs or taken buyouts. I mean, that was not something that looked stable. Now it's not. And you can literally practice law if you learn how to do it and learn how to deal with these things well into your 80s. So if you start your job at 25, that gives you, 55 years to practice. And why would you leave a profession after just a few years when you have 50 plus years available to continue practicing? And there are lots of attorneys that do it. I've even placed partners in their 80s. I mean, it's just ridiculous how much opportunity there are in law firms and how much stability there can be if you learn this sort of stuff. And, when I was practicing law, I did not have the systems cracked. I worked in two large law firms. I worked in Quinn Emanuel in Los Angeles, and then I worked at a New York firm that's no longer in business. But, what I saw around me when I was there just really scared me. I saw partners getting fired. So I was like, what kind of career stability is there here? Partners are getting fired, associates getting fired, often for non-consequential things. Not necessarily an Emmanuel, which is actually a very nice firm, but at the New York firm I was at, I saw partners going crazy. And I said to myself, people going crazy and just having serious psychological problems. And I said to myself, like, does it make sense to continue this when I don't understand the rules and the rules make no sense? And they didn't make sense in the large law firms I worked with, but they can make sense others. And I was so perplexed by this that, to a great extent, I started seeing all these people that were unhappy. And it became kind of a passion for me and my life's purpose to help people understand these games. And that's what I write about, and that's what I talk about, so people can, be happy. And I think that, anyone that goes to law school and passes the bar can thrive in this profession. I mean, anyone. It doesn't matter how you did in school. It doesn't matter the law school you went to. You can do all this without being depressed, without being unhappy, without abusing substances, without needing all sorts of prescription medication, without failing and more. And how you cope with a law firm and what you learn today, for a lot of people, probably half attorneys out there, is kind of a life and death matter. It's going to influence how happy you are. And if you learn these rules, it can really change the direction of your life. And I literally studied this my entire career. I've seen people that are very happy that I work with and doing very well. And so I'm going to talk to you really today about what people do with all this pressure, regardless of the school you went to, regardless of the caliber of firm you're at, and how to be, remain sane, be successful, and happy. And you may not believe it, but some of the most successful attorneys out there, people making, $7, $8 million a year, are successful and happy, and they're not. They don't succumb to the stress, and they're able to compartmentalize their lives and have different types of priorities that no one's taught them. So they learn how to approach their legal careers, much differently, how to think about things in terms of those who go off the rails. And, being an attorney and being successful is about how you run your mind space. Like, how do you think about things? Like, what do you prioritize? Like, what do you make sure that you do that to keep you happy and successful? Like, how do you set aside time to do things? And if you do these things, you're just going to have a better psychology and a much better life. So here's kind of the priorities that I believe. So most of the problems that attorneys have are because their priorities are out of whack, and they don't have systems for managing priorities and the things that are important. They don't make sure that they block out a certain portion of their time for different things. And you have energy. So everyone has kind of life force, and that life force you can direct towards whatever. I mean, you can direct it towards, if you want to write books, you can write it towards writing books if you're good at that. If you want to be like a superstar fitness person, you can direct it towards that. If you want to be an attorney, you can direct it towards that. But if you misdirect that energy, it can hurt you. It can hurt your soul, because you don't have things that are necessarily replenishing that energy. And energy is what it's all about. Like, what do you send your energy to? Where do you send your life force? And everybody has life force. And if you don't nurture that life force, and you don't keep that motivate, you don't motivate that and push that in the right way, and you don't recharge it, then you're in trouble. And that really is, the most important thing you offer your profession in the world is your energy. And think about like the most successful attorneys you may be familiar with, where they've got all this energy, and they direct it towards certain things. Politicians do that, actors and actresses do that, athletes do that, and that's what makes them valuable, is that energy. That energy is the only thing that matters. If you're looking for an attorney, and that attorney, you're talking to them and they're all beat down and they don't have any energy, then you're going to pick up on that, and you're not going to want that attorney. You wouldn't hire that attorney. So you can challenge your energy in different directions, and how you channel that energy is going to be, that life force is going to determine, what's going to end up happening to you. So if you don't have a system for that, and you don't know how to channel that energy in a positive manner, then your energy is going to get sucked away from you, and you'll fail, and you'll fail to achieve what you want, and you'll be unhappy at a very early age practicing law. Now, large law firms, and most law firms, prefer if you push the energy towards their clients, they want that. If you push your energy towards billing hours, they want that. So everybody is competing for your energy, and they're not going to ever, no law firm, even if they see you're working too hard, is ever going to tell you to stop working, because it's not in their benefit. So you have to understand that there's a lot of people competing for your energy. Your spouses or your significant others competing for your energy. Your children are competing for your energy. Your health is competing for your energy. All these different things are competing for your energy. And so you have to realize that how you manage that energy is going to really determine whether or not you're going to have a good life and a good experience. And if you don't manage that energy, that's a problem. So most attorneys, at least the most successful attorneys, not the most successful, but the highest driven attorneys, will often make work their number one priority. And not everybody does that. Fewer people do that now than used to, but they make that, a different priority. And you have all these different ways that you can direct your energy, and that you can replenish your energy. You have the things that that are important. There could be your health, then your job as well, friends and acquaintances, romantic life, travel, religion, which a lot of attorneys that are very successful for whatever reason have some sort of spiritual grounding where they will go to church each week, or they will pray, or they will meditate, or whatever. Other people have the priorities of being recognized. They want people to say good things about them. They want people to feel good about them. They want to get support and reassurance. Some people have recreation. There's just all these different priorities, and work is obviously very important, but the attorneys that have the most problems generally make work in their career by far just the most massive priority there is. And that's just also the thing that can really hurt you, and it's to the detriment of everything else. It's, there's no reason that, the only reason that practicing law and people really fail at it and have problems is they make just way, to the most maximum extent possible, work the biggest priority. And really what happens is, for the most successful attorneys, the ones that have the longest career, they don't put themselves in a situation, they put themselves in a situation where work is the number one priority. And that's something that the most successful attorneys that I've seen actually don't. So, when I first started practicing law, I was in this firm, and Quinn and Manning was like maybe 50 attorneys, and every single partner, I think, that was there, like the entire firm, was divorced. And this was a good firm. It was, anybody that had been married was divorced, at least had been married over more than a few years. And these were people that had been graduates of the best Ivy League law schools, the top law schools, and done really well there. And a lot of them at the time had started their careers at Cravath Moore, which is an awesome firm by one of the top 5 in the country. But they'd all been divorced. And then a lot of these people were also suffering from, personal issues. They were unhealthy. If you look at a lot of very successful attorneys, at a young age, they're very unhealthy. They're often overweight. They pale. They're pale. They seem like, they never get out in the sun. And the firm I was at had its own gym, but I'd actually never seen anybody use it. And I'd heard that someone used it one time, but I'd never even confirmed it. Out of these people that I worked with at the first firm, one of them, a partner that I worked with, ended up quitting the practice of law because it was too stressful. And whatever happened with his, however he was thinking about the world, he went to prison for running $100 million Ponzi scheme. And then another pushed his wife off a cruise ship and killed her for insurance money. And then he was also, arrested for trying to kill his second wife. Another person that made partner in the firm by billing an incredible number of hours in his first 3 years, died of a heart attack in his mid-40s. And even in my fraternity that I was in college, one of my 20 fraternity brothers who really wanted to be successful as an attorney and went to work in a big firm in Miami, he ended up killing himself, probably related to the practice of law, but he also was drinking a lot, probably to deal with the stress. I talk to attorneys all the time. I was talking to another one last week about preparing him for an interview, and it was like 3 p.m, and I could tell he was drunk, and he just was very stressed and upset. So these examples, can emphasize that, all these things, bad things can happen to you. And these are all people that made work like their number one priority. And so, when I was working, I, began to understand why so many attorneys were divorced. I mean, when I would get home at night, my fiance, I had absolutely no energy for a relationship with her. And all day she was just wandering around Los Angeles doing whatever, working and stuff. But I had no energy from my relationship with her. And I ended up getting married, and she ended up having an affair. And it's very common for the wives of attorneys to have affairs. The attorneys don't know it, but I've heard so many examples of that. And why would, how could anybody have a normal life if you're not around and you're not, you're not in a good headspace when you come home? Then, what do you expect? And this is unfortunate, but it's just something to think about if you marry the wrong person. And, when I would get home, my, wife was almost always sleeping. I'd get home at 1 a.m. And in order to calm down, I would usually have a couple of beers, like large cans of beers, and I'd smoke, and, and we grew apart. And I would be in a bad mood. And, I didn't intend for any of this to happen, but it happened because of the environment that I was in. All my energy, everything that I had was consumed by work. And it was literally by being at work all the time, or even when I was home, worrying all the time about my cases, about deadlines, about my hours, about not advancing. And it was extremely stressful. It was demanding, and it was one of the most difficult times of my life. And so, here, even though I enjoyed writing and things, the overwhelming stress, it doesn't leave time for a lot of people for a proper personal life. It leaves you no time to take care of yourself, and your body and your mind. But you need to make the most of your time on the work. So, I kept finding, again, all of these wives of male attorneys having affairs, and I don't know why it is, but it's something that is very common. It's unfortunate, but it's very common. And I was in an airplane not too long ago, coming back from a wedding, and was a partner. She was married to a partner at Gibson Dunn, and she had traveled to the wedding and then was flying back, and then I saw her having a full-blown affair with another man, making out with another man. She didn't know I was on the same flight, and I'd known her since I was very young. She'd always seemed to be a very proper type of person. She got a PhD from Ivy League Law School, and it's someone I never, Ivy League College, I'm sorry, and school, and was someone I never, expected something like that from. And she'd been with him, all through when he was at Harvard Law School, and they very much in love, and that was going on. So this sort of thing is common when you're not present, in relationships. And divorces can cause all sorts of problems, and cheating can cause all sorts of problems. And so this happens when people just make work the number one priority. And if you're not able to direct your life force towards relationships and your health, and you just can't have a healthy life if you're trying to work all the time, and your life will suffer. You won't do as good a job when you're at work. You'll just be inefficient, unhappy. Your relationships won't go well at work, and well, that's just not going to happen if you're doing that all the time. And so at some point, you're actually going to become less successful by working all the time, if that's all you do. I was talking to a partner just yesterday in New York City, and he doesn't even have his own clients, but he's been working 80 hours a week for over a year. And he's looking to move to a new firm just because he wants to get like more humane hours, where he's not working like 20 hours every weekend. It's just absolutely crazy. And law firms will allow you to work a lot of hours. That's in their best interest, unless you control it, or unless you find a firm where you don't have to do that. And people that are just in a situation where all they're doing is billing incredible amounts of hours and there's no future, but you may be at a really good law firm, you have to find an environment where you can do better. People that work, like, for example, outside of major cities and middle market firms, or they tend to practice law their entire careers. They in law firms. People that oftentimes try to work in the best law firms don't, or people that choose the wrong law firms that don't value them and where there's no advancement potential often also quit. That going in house is their number one goal. It's just crazy. And people like in New York City, it's very brutal there. It just can grind on the largest firms, on people physically, mentally, and the fact that there's hardly any hope for advancement is pretty scary. And there are a lot of people, of course, that succeed there. I mean, tons of people. They do very, very well. They make incredible, incomes and are happy, but it can be very, very bad. And people are so, and many times, prestige oriented, that they will try to stay in the most prestigious firms as long as they can, not only for the money, but because of how that makes them look to law school classmates and others. But in my experience, the most successful and the happiest attorneys prioritize health, they prioritize their work and career, they prioritize their personal life. And I can't even emphasize how important health is. I was working with this guy that I had started working with him when he was an associate at Baker Botts, when he was younger, like in his 20s, and then he ended up making partner there. And one day he went home to visit his family, and he'd been working these incredible hours. It was like for Christmas or something. And he walked in the front door of his house and had a heart attack and died. It's very sad. The guy's named Jeffrey Sullivan. And he was a really nice person. But why would you die like 50 plus years before you need to, because you're working these incredible hours and stress out all the time. So your health needs to be your first priority. Then your work and your career. And it sounds very harsh to say, but it shouldn't be your first priority, but it should be your second priority. It should take precedence over your personal life. And so health, working career, and personal life. So let's talk about your health for a minute. So your health needs to come first. So, if you're trying to work, in a major law firm, most people can't even imagine how they would have the time to maybe eat a healthy meal, not order something fast food restaurant late at night. They would not understand, how they can get exercise when they're trying to work all the time. But literally, the health needs to come before your career, because it's the only thing you have, and it's what gives you life force. And the most successful attorneys are able to make health their priority. And the health is your psychological health, which means being able to stay focused and happy and not depressed and not beaten down. And people that are very good at the job will understand and do understand that without their health, that they have absolutely nothing. And if you do have that, then things are going to be much better for you. And the most successful attorneys will try to be healthy. They'll try to get the sleep that they can, and they'll watch their diets and all these sorts of things. A lot of times for their psychological health, they will do yoga or maybe meditation. And sometimes they'll even go to a therapist. I mean, which frankly is okay. I mean, you can go to a therapist. I work with people sometimes that just want coaching. And those people, I help them with their psychological health, because I help them create understanding of how things are working with their mind and how they can, fix those. And people that are successful will often, I know one woman that became the general counsel, but she was a partner in a very good law firm in San Francisco. And she used to go on retreats regularly just for weekends and things, where she would talk about things or do yoga, and she became extremely successful. I know other people that will go in isolation tanks, or they'll become very active in faith communities. I know one woman that is an extremely successful associate. She bills a lot, like at least 2,500 hours a year in a major New York law firm. But she has these things that are just non-negotiable, like going to church every week and making sure that she's exercising a certain number a week, and things that get her outside of her head and help her find peace and balance and perspective. And she's an extremely successful person. I mean, she's just doing very, very well. I know, I didn't understand for the longest time, but the most successful attorneys that I've spoken with that are doing very, very well in the profession, that have happy lives and are, and their kids are happy, and they're, that sort of thing, are able to make their physical and psychological health a priority. I remember when I was growing up, one of my best friends, his dad was a partner at a big firm in Detroit, and he just completely went crazy. And it was because he probably didn't, in my opinion, didn't have a real father figure around, and his father was always gone, and happy. Kids can be no problem when people, the priorities aren't good. But if you don't take care of yourself and your health, it's absolutely impossible, to do well. You won't do well in your relationships. You'll be, you won't be outside. You just won't be happy. Your career won't do as well. And, this may sound, like, something you can't do, but it may sound selfish when you think you need to also spend time with your family, or you need to, you need to be, doing well at work. But if you don't have your health, you just simply can't do the other things around you. And one of the more successful attorneys I know makes, over, right now, I think he's making over $8 million a year. He was very successful at a young age, and he ended up getting divorced when he had two young children, which is never good for kids. He became addicted to cocaine until things got out of control. And he went to rehab, and then he relapsed. And then the next time he went to rehab, he addressed all these issues, and he made his health his priority, and that was 10 years ago. And he's one of the more successful attorneys in the country. He's remarried, he's doing well. So he addressed these health issues and these drug issues, and became much, much more successful. And I can't tell you, like, how many people I've seen go off the rails. early in my career, I was working with one woman, and she was, a New York law firm's office, and in Los Angeles, and she got this great job. And when she graduated from Harvard Law School, she did so well there that they asked her to stay on, to stay on there and teach a class, like right, when she was getting ready to graduate, which is just insane. Like, think about that. Like, that law school asking her to stay and teach a class because she was just such a good and insightful student. And she went to work in this firm, and she'd been cocaine addict earlier in her life when she was a model, and had got off these drugs and had gotten to a good law school and done well there. And then she took this job, and then within 6 months, she was like literally smoking crystal meth all day, and she lost her job. And then I had her come to work with me for a recruiter because I didn't realize she was on all these drugs. She just wanted to get a new job. And then she came to work for me, and she was just absolutely not doing well, and working these weird hours, and having all these problems. And she ended up losing the job. And about 4 or 5 months later, she wandered into my office in downtown Los Angeles with this other woman. She was not wearing shoes. She was all dirty. You could tell she'd been living on the streets, and asked me to cash a check for her that she found. I mean, this is literally some of the stuff that I've seen. And so, obviously she didn't make her psychological health a priority. She failed in the practice of law very, very early. And she ended up actually cleaning herself up, and now she's a criminal law attorney in Sacramento. But when you make your health a priority, everything falls into place. So exercise is important. If you do that, you're going to look better and feel better. You're going to have more energy to share with your clients. You're going to be more psychologically balanced. You're going to be able to have more energy for your family and the world around you. And then you'll become more of a positive force. So everybody I know, that became successful, they set limits. So no one's ever going to tell you not to keep working so hard. But people aren't going to miss you if it's only 1 hour a day, or you do something for your psychological health and your physical health as often as you can. You can always find an hour, you can always find 2 hours, and you spend your time. You make sure that you make that a priority, and you make that something that's non-negotiable. People want to go out for drinks after work. You have to make your health a priority. You can't make that, something that, that you don't take care of, because if you don't do that, you're going to be in trouble. And I'm just telling you that if you're in a firm where you can't do that, you probably need to find another firm. If you're in a situation where you've just completely ignored your health, then you have to remember that it could end up, costing you your entire career, because you will have issues, and it's not going to be good for you. So you need to be a positive force. You need to have energy to give to other things. You need to be calm. You need to be psychologically balanced. And if you don't do that, you're not going to be able to direct your energy in a positive way. And then the second thing is your career does need to be a priority. And unfortunately, it does for most of the successful attorneys. It should come before your family and friends. If you don't make your career a priority, then you're going to fail. So you need the type of family that is going to respect you, and that you're going to be able to give time to, and where things are going to work if you're working hard. But if you don't make your career a priority, then you're probably, if you don't fail, you're not going to reach your full potential. And a lot of people don't make their career a priority. They take jobs, that are beneath them because they haven't done that, or they don't advance by, trying to get business, as attorneys, or not working as hard as they need to. I place attorneys all the time, and when I place those attorneys, many times they'll go to firms, and they won't go into the office or when they're supposed to, or they won't take on extra work, or they will do things where they prioritize, not working. They disappear during the day, or they don't improve the quality of their work even when they could, and they fail. And it happens quite a bit. I mean, I hear that from our firm places a lot of people, like one per day or more and more. And out of those one per day, or 5 per week, or 7 or 10 per week, sometimes as many as 1 or 2 will go to a new firm, and their work won't be a priority. They'll make mistakes. They won't learn. They won't respond to mistakes. They won't work in the way that the firm wants them to work, meaning the hours they want them to work, or be in the office when they want them. They'll make all these mistakes and they'll fail. And it's just stupid. Like, why would you fail at something when all you need to do is apply yourself and you can succeed? And it's just crazy. So, why do you put your career ahead of your family and friends? You do that because if you don't put your career, if you don't make that a priority, then you're not going to be able to support your family. And law firms are competitive. They're competitive everywhere. I mean, it doesn't really matter where you're at. If the law firm has work to do, you have to do it. Someone has to do it. The clients need the work done. So you need to be able to do that in order to succeed. Now, does making your career a priority mean that you can't spend time with your family? No. Does it mean you can't have friends? No. But it means that your headspace means to, when you're at work, you have to do the absolute best job you can. And you have to make sure that you're focused, that you're improving, that you take things seriously. I hear stuff all the time, like an attorney I was working with a guy recently. This is a sad story too. He was an associate in North Carolina at a major American law firm, and he was doing real estate finance. And he was in a group of 5 other associates who were all around his same class year, like 1 to 4 or 5, or maybe even less than that, 1 to 3. And one day, he asked a partner that he was working with for some feedback, and the partner said, "Well, the way you approach this is not aggressive enough. Like, you need to, you're not acting like the other attorneys. You're not taking things seriously. You're not enthusiastic about the work you're doing. You're just, you're just kind of doing things in a rote way, like you're just an employee and you're not really part of the team, like fighting hard for the clients." And he ended up losing his job. And when he lost his job, because he was in North Carolina, it was very, very difficult to find firms that did this type of sophisticated real estate finance. So he started looking all around the country, but he was unemployed. Like, he got fired because his headspace wasn't in the game. You need to always be in the game. And then he went out in some interviews that I got him, and he, communicated the same lack of total enthusiasm for his work. And because he did that, he didn't get any job offers. And then he ended up getting this job in New York City, where he was a contract attorney for a major firm. And because he was a contract attorney for a major firm, he was completely now just going to have a lot of problems ever getting in, to a big firm again. And that happened because his headspace wasn't there. He didn't approach things with the same level of enthusiasm. He wasn't excited about it. He wasn't looking for work. He wasn't doing all these things that a successful attorney needs to do. And when you get an assignment from a partner, the partner is your client. And because the partner is your client, you need to give them the same sort of service that their clients expect of them. You need to give it everything you got. Doesn't mean you need to work crazy hours all the time, but you need to be very, very in the game and enthusiastic. And when you go into a law firm, by the way, you're not just an employee. You're someone that's there to do the best possible job you can for the clients and the people you're working for. Employees just kind of push paper and punch out and work the hours that they think they need to in order to get by. But you need to have a level of enthusiasm that's very, very high. People need to think if they give you work, like, you're going to approach it with a lot of enthusiasm, do the best possible job you can, instead of just not, being completely into it and excited. One of the first negative experiences I had is I went to talk to this associate that was like maybe a mid-level associate. I was a summer associate in a law firm, and she asked me to find some case law, like, regarding some issue. And I went and printed out like 5 cases and researched them for a few hours, and then just highlighted the parts that I thought were important. And she did not like that at all. She said, you should have written it up. Like, you should have thought through these cases more aggressively. You should have shepherdized them better. You should have found additional work and all this sort of stuff. And I learned then that when someone gives you like an assignment, like, you need to go all out, and you need to do the absolute best job you can, and you need to approach it with a lot of enthusiasm. And even researching case laws, things like, you find the case law, but then, maybe you even go into the legislative record where a law's been passed and find out the intent of the law, and all these things that the best attorneys do to produce the best work and look like, that they're making this a priority. So your work needs to be a priority, and it doesn't mean you need to be in the office all the time, but it needs to be when someone gives you something to do, you're coming at it with a major level of enthusiasm and dedication. You're trying to do the absolute best job you can. And then if you need to bill a certain number of hours to get by and do well there, then you build the hours you need to. And you figure out how to get it done. I mean, people can, if you're thinking about matters for an hour or two when you're at home and you're thinking about cases, that's billable time. Regardless of where you are and what you're doing, you need to figure out how to get the hours. And it's honestly, if you are in a good psychological space and you're in a good physical space, then you can do that. But you need to be putting life force into your work, and people need to think that you're, really there for them. I mean, and that's important. And there's a difference between an employee and someone that is invested in the job. An employee just does their job and they do the minimum required. They don't put a lot of enthusiasm into it. It could be like working on a production line, like putting parts on some different machine or something that's being produced. I mean, that's an employee. But someone that's more than that is someone that buys into the mission, whatever the client is, and buys in to the mission, the attorneys there and the people that they're working for, and does the absolute best job they can to succeed. So then your third option needs to be your family, your friends, and your personal interests. And those things need to, third, and they need to be part of your life. So you develop percentages of things that you're doing. So your health needs to be a priority, and maybe that's 15 or 10% of what you're doing. And then your work needs to also be a percentage of what you're doing, the largest percentage, because you're at work most of the day. But if you want to be successful, these things often can't be your number one priority. So your health is first, and then your career is second, because if you don't have a good career, you're never going to get anywhere. You're going to be an associate forever. You're going to lose jobs. You're not going to work in your highest capacity. You're not going to be someone that clients want to hire. But if you want to have a good career, then you need to, make, your friends and personal interest third. So here's, what the most successful and happiest attorneys do. And there's certain characteristics that they have. And some of these characteristics will overlap. But if you want to be very successful as an attorney, you need to adopt these characteristics. So the first thing about friends and family is you want to be around people that support you and care about you. So, the people that you choose to spend your time with, will either support you and make you feel good about yourself, or they won't. So, you need to maintain an ecosystem of people that are, that like you, where you feel energized when you're around them and you don't feel depleted. And there are people that are negative, and when you talk to them, you just don't feel good about yourself. There are people that don't respect you. When you're around them, you don't feel good about yourself. There are people that undermine you, and you need to be around people that will actually support you and care about you. You need a spouse that, or a significant other that's going to support and care about you. And people that are successful will try to have well-balanced, romantic lives. They will spend their time with people that care about them, that see eye to eye, that see them for who they are, not just in their income or their title. And this is going to give you, a boost, and make you feel good about yourself. So you need to have some sort of relationship with friends and people that are making you feel good about yourself. You need to surround yourself with people that are also successful and help you grow. And then you need to have people around you in a romantic capacity that are going to make you also feel good and are going to see you for the person you are, not just the fact that you're an attorney and you make a lot of money, which a lot of people, they attract those type of people, and that's not good. You need to be around people that are going to support you romantically. And then you also need to be, physically healthy. Now, not every attorney that I know that's successful and happy is physically fit, but most often a lot of them are. I mean, when you go in to see a client, people are going to be more impressed with an attorney that looks physically fit and vibrant. That's who they would want representing you. That's who you would want representing you. And so they're often, they take care of their bodies, and that's good. And then the most successful attorneys are also psychologically calm. They're happy, and they understand that they can't make good decisions if they're angry, if they're having issues. Whatever it is, they will meditate, they will go to therapy and get coaches, and they're able to stay calm, happy, and balanced. And that helps them. Now, some people A lot of attorneys and people that are very motivated will have various psychological problems that they brought into their careers that were there before. Maybe they were trying to prove something, or maybe who knows. And so they're on edge, they're super competitive, and they're undermining themselves. And there's nothing wrong with seeing a psychiatrist. And if there's some issues that you have, fixing those and getting medications. And if you are constantly unhappy and ruminating, you need to look at what is causing that. Is that causing it because you have some biochemical issues that you've always had, or is that being caused because of the fact that you're just in an unhappy environment? I know people that have attention deficit disorders that became very successful, and they went and they got prescriptions for Ritalin or whatever, and that helped them. And so maybe you have certain issues that you can address. And so if you're feeling that certain things, you can potentially fix your psychology with drugs. I mean, prescription drugs if you need to. And sometimes people are very unhappy because they drink too much, and that's a depressant or whatever. And then the most successful attorneys are energetic. They're successful and they're enthusiastic. So whatever is given to them to do is becomes like one of the most important thing in the world. So they'll just be very, very excited, and they won't let work overwhelm them, but they'll be energetic and enthusiasm, and they won't be acting like employees. And then they maintain a positive outlook towards the practice of law. They're not negative, because once they're negative, that comes across as negativity, comes across and is picked up by the people that you're working with. And there are people that, see the world in one way, and there are people that don't. So I'm sure wherever you've ever worked, there are people that will be unhappy. You will have lunch with them. They will walk into your office and they will talk about different negative things about the firm. And at the same time, there are partners there that have been there for 20 years. Maybe the firm's been in existence for 150 years or more. And people that have worked there have managed to succeed and do well. But law firms will expel people that are negative. They always know the groups of people that are negative. And if you associate with those people, then they will presume that you're negative. So why wouldn't you surround your people that are positive? You need to surround your people that are positive and believe in the practice of law. And, it's all about the environment. You could be in a firm with a very bad culture where everybody's negative about the firm, about the practice of law. And those are places that you need to avoid those sorts of people. Or there's those sorts of, atmospheres where people are just in general very unhappy. And maybe that's probably not a good place for you to be. You need to be around people that are positive and not negative. The most successful attorneys will take time for vacations. They will make sure that they block time out for that and they take it seriously so they can de-stress and see the world in a different way and get away from the problems associated with work. And when they come back, they're much more successful. I've noticed if I take 1 week off 4 times a year, like I do so much better in my job. Like I'm more insightful, I'm happier, I'm able to deal with problems and things that I might have been thinking, worrying about when I was gone, see perspective. And so you need to figure out, how do you take time off to recharge and to see the world in a different way. And so these characteristics that I'm talking about are all about being positive. They're about maintaining energy. They're about getting perspective, and they're about balance. And you can do all these things in any firm and still become a partner. You can bring this positivity, energy, and balance to your life and career, and you're going to be much more happier. People will advance people that are happy at work. People will advance people that are enthusiastic about their jobs. People will advance people that they see as having nice families and things like that. People will advance people that look like they're in good relationships. Law firms will advance people that look good and aren't all beaten down and don't reflect well in the firm. So all these things are going to give you a better life and a better career if you do it. So how do you do it? So you need systems. So you need to have systems, and you need to plan your work and your life in a way where you have systems. And systems need to be mandatory. They're not things that you do when you want to. If you're flying an airplane, you don't maintain it when you want to. You have to maintain it all the time. It's non-negotiable. If you don't maintain your plane, then the FAA won't allow you to fly. Planes have to be inspected once a year. They have to have their engines rebuilt at least one, different at different periods after a certain number of hours. When you go into a plane, someone's flying a plane, there's all these checklists and things that are non-negotiable that you need to do in order for the plane to fly, and you need the same sort of systems for your life. And so in my particular case, I set aside 2 hours each day to exercise. I will go running, I will lift weights, I will sit in a sauna. And I don't think I missed a day doing one of those things in probably over 10 years, because if I don't do that, then I don't have the energy to give to the business, and I'm not in a good state, and I just work all the time, and it's something that I need. And I started making that a priority when I started noticing that a lot of the most successful partners would do things like go swimming for an hour a day, or duck out at certain times. They bring their gym bags with them. And a lot of times people would even just take like a 20-minute run before work. What's 20 minutes? And they seem to have systems for health, and they did that. And so moving for your body is important. I mean, you see this 10,000 steps a day or whatever, but you can't be successful if you don't take care of your body. And you also have to have systems for your diet, and not bombing your food, your body with unhealthy food, because if you bomb your body with unhealthy food, you'll gain weight, you will not have energy if you're eating a non-balanced diet. You'll watch what, they won't abuse substances. So, you have to avoid, using bad substances or getting addicted to them. And, the most successful partners, if you look in firms, are often, they look good. And, why do you look good? You look good and you look your best because when you walk into a room with a client wants to think like this person is even more together, and this is the kind of person that I want that I want representing me, that I want the opposing counsel to see, or the opposing, someone on the opposing side of a deal. They want you to look good. I mean, you have to. It's how you dress, but it's also how you look, and so you need to be as presentable as you possibly can. And think about wherever you worked. I mean, the most unhealthy people are pretty obvious, and those types of people typically, the partners would prefer to have someone working through their clients that looks healthy. So you need energy to perform at the highest level, and you do get energy if you get a lot more energy if you're able to exercise and things. And your diet, substances, and those things are important. I know so many people that don't make health a priority and go off the rails. And so your goal is to maintain a mindset and the health that will allow you to practice for decades. I've given you several examples at the start of this webinar of people that didn't make health a priority. If you're at a firm where your health is just completely at risk, then you need to find another firm. That's just as simple as that. If you literally cannot get out of the office and you're working all the time, and that's going to affect your health, then you need to find something else to do. It doesn't make sense to have to do that at certain firms. And certain firms, that's just not expected. And the only way you can do that is if for some reason you are getting so much, you have such an ability to do it that, but it will kill you if you're not fit and healthy. And different people respond to situations differently. So for example, Bill Clinton's brother, Robert Clinton, has had, very unsuccessful life. He's Kane. He's struggled with that most of his life, but, Bill Clinton became president. So both, and they grew up in the same environments with an abusive alcoholic father and problems with their mom. But one of them was able to control his headspace, probably, if they were both, from the same mom and everything, or the same family. They had different choices of how they organized their lives and how they thought about things. And obviously, Bill Clinton became successful. And Jimmy Carter's brother, he became an unsuccessful gas station owner and was a college dropout. And when Jimmy Carter became a nuclear engineer in the Navy, and then became president of the United States. So how do those two people think about their lives? Like, one brother thinks about it differently and develops systems and things for doing well, and then the other gives up or just has problems and never gets themselves together. Same family, same problems in their family, same excuses they could offer for being unsuccessful, but one brother ends up succeeding and the other didn't. So it's all about your mind, and it's how you control your mind and how you think about things. And so you need to learn how do successful people think about things compared to unsuccessful people. I know a lot of people, for example, that have ended up having changing the direction of their life by doing something like listening to Anthony Robbins or some other motivational speaker that gives them a framework of how to think about their lives. And you need some sort of framework to do that. Obviously, one person can make the most of their environment, the other can't. So you'll see people that you probably know that can be extremely successful in large firms and they're making the most of their environment. There's other people that don't make the most of their environment. So you need to figure out, how do I make the most of my environment? What are people doing in my environment that's making them successful? What are the people doing that are happy? What are the people doing that have the most business? What are people doing that have the strongest families? And you need to model that. Like, how do you model that? You spend time around those people. You learn about what they're doing. You try to figure out what their model of the world is. You copy them, or you copy a variety of people. But doing that is going to make your life more successful. And you need to have priorities. You need to make sure you have priorities. So what is a priority for your job and for your life? It's exercising. It's finding different things that are going to enable you to keep your mind fit, whether it's yoga or meditation or swimming or a gym. If you have problems psychological things that you're unable to process, then you should find a therapist or someone that you can talk to. If you are religious, you should have some sort of non-negotiable thing where you're going to church or whatever each week. Some people that are Jewish will make sure they leave before sunrise at work and then work all the way till rest and relax and pray and things all the way to sunset sunset on Monday. And that keeps a lot of people that do that very, very grounded and happy and psychologically well. And the Shabbat, they will go and have dinner with their families and with other people. And then they'll spend the day doing things with their family. And then they'll clear their head, and that works. And it's something that the Jews have been doing for thousands of years in a 4,000-year religion. So that's obviously something that works. So, you need to do something that keeps you grounded, and whatever it is, you need to have systems. Jews built that system into their lives, mainly conservative and Orthodox Jews, but that's something that's worked for thousands of years, and it helps people maintain their physical and psychological health. In Genesis and the Bible, it says you have to take Sundays. That's when God rested. I mean, you have to rest. So you need to make your physical health and your psychological health a priority. If you don't do that, then you don't have energy to bring into other things. And then, you need to, make that a priority. And if you make friends a priority, that's not going to be good. And many times if you don't make work your priority, that's not good. So, you need to think about that. And I know one attorney, he had two children with learning disabilities. He didn't like how the school was treating his children, so he decided to spend time with his wife interviewing different places that could help his kids. Doing that, he missed like 10 to 15 days of work and deadlines and things. Other people needed to step in. He was a graduate of a top law school working at one of the most competitive firms in Los Angeles. And it may sound like this is really harsh, but he lost his job. And the idea that the firm is that our clients are spending a lot of money and they demand that we prioritize their work, and your job needs to be a priority. And at that particular firm, that type of attitude towards work wasn't tolerated. I know another attorney that was order of the COI from a top 10 law school. She was trying to find a job that would only let her work 4 days a week so she could spend time with her child. She was a young associate. People are not interested in that because they can hire people that will work at the large firms 5 days a week in the office, or that will not expect people to walk away from clients 1 day a week. And so, if she were interested in working, every day, then she would have gotten tons of jobs, and she's not getting jobs because of that. Does that sound crazy? No. Why is it not crazy? Because any law firm, a top law firm that's hiring people, can hire people that will work 5 days a week or be dedicated to the job 5 days a week. And why would they do that as opposed to hiring someone that only wants to work 4 days a week? It doesn't make any sense. So that's how law firms think about it. I know lots of men, law firms will say, hey, you can take 6 weeks off paternity leave. And what always happens to men when they do that, when they come back, they're not well received because the most successful attorneys don't do that. So are you modeling the people there? If you think paternity leave is a priority and you have someone at home to also take care of your child when the child's young, that's not a good thing. So I know people, have been practicing it for 6 or 7 years, and then they decide they're going to take 6 weeks off or a month off for paternity leave, and that doesn't work. I know another guy that he failed the bar. He went to Stanford Law School. He failed the bar twice, and then after failing the bar the second time, the law firm actually kept him on. He was at a good firm, was going to give him another chance. And then he decided that he wanted to take a 2-week vacation with his girlfriend to Israel. And he came back and lost his job. So work was obviously not a priority for him, as was the bar. But, you need to make those things third. And, you need to have a balanced life, but, your family creating these, huge obligations for time and stuff. If you do that, that's going to be a sign that you're not dedicated, because a lawyer works for clients. If you had your own solo practice and you decided that you weren't going to do work and you weren't going to show up to court, or you weren't going to get transactions done in time, then your clients would go away. And law firms work for clients, partners work for clients. So you're expected to have the same level of dedication, to the exclusion of lots of time off or other things for your family. And, if you're working in a large law firm, then it may not be for you, and it doesn't have to be. I'm certainly not emphasizing that these priorities are correct. All I'm trying to tell you is what the most successful attorneys do, and it's health, career, family and friends, and so forth next. And you need to have that same level of enthusiasm, for that. So your job's important. Your life and health are more important. I say that just because I've seen so many people die, so many people go off the rails psychologically. And my experience, if you do that, everything is really going to fall into place. Then your job, and then your family, and then everything else. And so if you have that sort of discipline, you're going to do very well. And you need systems, you need to model people, and you need to really stay, completely, you need to stay in the game and really emphasize those things. And that, in my experience, has been in the process of working with thousands of lawyers, placing thousands of attorneys. What I've seen about the people that have succeeded the most and been happy and able to continually do well, do those things. Okay, so we'll take a quick break. And then when I come back, I'll answer questions. Questions are one of my favorite times of the week, because people are able to talk about issues that are relevant to them and ask questions. You can ask questions about this, or you can ask any questions you have about your career. And I will stay as long as I need to make sure we get through all of them. So let's take a quick break. And then when I come back, we'll do questions. Thanks. All right, we'll go to questions. Just give me 1 second. All right, here we go. So I will not take these in the order that people ask them, but I'll take them to make sure I get through all the questions. And by the way, if you're second. Okay, so the first question. What would getting a degree in public health, how would that be a useful move for me if I worked in firms doing healthcare related litigation, but haven't had a job in a few years to get back to work? Okay, so the couple answers to that question. People will often think that they need to do something else if they're not getting a job. But in reality, if you want to do healthcare related litigation, whether it's medical malpractice defense or plaintiff's work or some other type of healthcare work, working for large companies, there are always going to be a ton of places that you can work. There are literally probably 10,000 law firms in the country that do that. So you may be applying only to jobs that are becoming open. If you're unemployed, it's going to be harder for you to get a job. And if you haven't worked, but you need to always research as many possible firms as you can and find as many places as you can that do that practice area. It's really simple. If you do a search online for any type of practice area, there's going to be a lot of firms that do it. So if you're in Los Angeles, you could say Los Angeles law firms that do healthcare related litigation, and you're going to find just a massive number of them. These are big ones like Quinn Emanuel and Davis Wright and things that do it. So you have all these kind of large law firms, but then you have smaller law firms, and then you'll see all these different lists of firms and things. BCG, we maintain a list of all these different places that do it, and then you come here to this page and you'll see more and more and more and more and more and more firms. So what does that mean? That means that if you're an attorney, you can apply to just a massive number of places, and those law firms do not have to have jobs. That you can apply to them without jobs, and there will be hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of places that you can find to work in. And this is something that very few people do. Most people will just sit there waiting for jobs and things to show up. And then they will try to get jobs with firms that have openings instead of being proactive. So in a market like Los Angeles, there's probably going to be 200 firms or 300 or 400 or 500 that do it. If you just apply to those firms without even if they don't have openings, it's pretty easy to find positions. So this particular guy, Torin, this is his law firm. He's healthcare with litigation, health insurance portability. This is just one solo practitioner, and you could apply to him. So no one needs to go back to school. Regardless of your situation, you can always find jobs. If you were to apply to this person and he had the work to give you and he didn't have anybody working there, he would be very interested in you, because if he can hire someone and pay them, I don't know whatever salary you're thinking about, if you're billing out at $500 an hour and he can give you 2,000 hours worth of work, that's $1 million a year. And that's extra money he can make by, having you do the work. So even if he has 1,500 hours worth of work, he can have you do that and help out with things. So people are desperate out there to have people hire them. We talk to law firms every single day that are desperate for people. They will hire people that are unemployed. They will hire, they don't care. They need people. And so you need to make sure that you're applying to every possible place. And very few people do this. Most people, when they're doing searches for jobs, they'll only look at positions on things like, Indeed and that sort of thing. Law Crossing is a site that I own. It goes to every law firm website it can find with jobs on it. And then it takes those jobs and post them online. Those jobs, because they're on firm websites, they're often not advertised. So when you're looking at advertised jobs, a job board's job is to get as many people as possible to apply to that job. And so if you're trying to work in one of those firms that has a massive, that's not able to, that has openings and the job site's trying to drive as many applicants as possible, your odds of getting the position are very slim. So you need to be applying to firms that don't have openings, because if you apply to healthcare openings in Los Angeles, maybe there's 10 jobs, they're going to be very, very difficult for you to get. If you apply to 200 firms that don't have jobs, then that's 200 extra opportunities and you're the only applicant, you're much better to get hired. So BCG does something much different than any other recruiting firm. We send people to firms that have these kind of practice areas that match the person. Then when we do that, we get people jobs. And so the majority of our placements, like over 75%, are with firms that don't have jobs, but see somebody that can do the kind of work that they have. They realize that they can make money, and we present it as, this is an opportunity for you to make money. They hire the person. They do so because they can make money. So why wouldn't you apply to places that don't have openings when they can make money off you? So your next question, the other portion of it, is should you get a degree in public health? Yes, getting a degree in public health can help you. The reason it can help you is because it shows a commitment to the practice area. It gives you extra bona fides that will make it even easier for you to get jobs if you're just applying to firms without openings. And law firms like that because it looks good to their clients. It shows an interest in the practice area. But even better than a degree in public health, I know that there's some programs for healthcare law. So that would be actually smarter probably than public health, because it's more related to the law as opposed to something like public health. So great question. Thank you. Okay, so the next question is, how can I get hired by a top tier law firm with a lower ranked law school degree? So large law firms, some of them will always care about the quality of school you went to. They will care because it looks better for their clients if they hire people from the best law schools. People from the best law schools typically, not always, but most of the time, will show more aptitude for the practice of law because they do really well in the LSATs. They have a history of working really hard and getting good grades. So law firms will, presented with someone that didn't go to a highly ranked law school and someone from a highly ranked law school, they're generally going to want to hire the person from a higher ranked law school. You would too if you had your choice of who to hire. So, but how do you get hired by a top tier law firm? It's actually not that hard. All you need to do is you need to become a specialist in some sort of practice area. So if you become a specialist in doing commercial real estate transactions and you're 7 years out of law school doing that, or 5 years out of law school, there's going to be fewer attorneys at your level that do that type of work because a lot of these people have dropped out, they've gone in-house. So there's going to be a smaller tier of people doing whatever your practice area is after several years than you. So, I mean, then, there's going to be a smaller number of people. So the longer you're doing some practice area, the more marketable you're going to become. The other thing you can do as well is a lot of times, people will start out at smaller firms, but if you want to work in a top tier law firm, you need to be working in a practice area that large law firms do. So most large law firms do work for companies. So they do work on behalf of companies. So you would start out at a smaller law firm that's doing work on behalf of companies, or you would move from a law firm doing work on behalf of individuals to law firms doing work on behalf of companies. So all top tier law firms do most of their work for company facing clients, meaning companies that need transactions, companies that need real estate done, companies that need patents, companies that need different types of things done. And then the attorney has to become a specialist in that. One interesting example is most patent attorneys, they don't go to top law schools. They don't go to top law schools because they major in engineering related things where it's very difficult to get good grades. So they don't have good grades. So they don't get into the best law schools. But then they work for smaller law firms doing patents, and they do very sophisticated type patents. And then there may be very few people that do those sorts of patents. So the longer they're out of school, there's very few people that do that type of work. And so then they end up moving to large law firms. Almost no patent attorney gets hired. It's very rare graduating from law school. Most of them never get hired at top firms, just because a lot of times, they're even working as engineers during school, and they go to night school and things. So they don't get jobs in top firms out of school, but then they move to top firms later. So if you want to get into a top tier law firm, the best thing you can do is try to get involved in a practice area that's very niche that large law firms do. It could be finance, it could be some sort of real estate, it could be some sort of commercial litigation. You get involved doing that, and then you become much more marketable later on. Once you get experience working in a practice area that the companies do, then that's going to help you move to a larger law firm. Some people will start off at smaller law firms doing it, then they will move to a larger law firm doing it, and then even a larger law firm doing it. And if a top tier law firm interviews you, a lot of times they do prefer people that didn't go to the best schools when they hire laterally, because 5-6 years in, a lot of the associates from other large law firms sort of lack the enthusiasm that someone that's really trying to break into a top tier law firm would have. You can also get into top tier law firms by networking, by doing a really good job on the opposite side of a transaction, by really showing a high level of dedication to your practice area and a lot of enthusiasm, getting people's attention and writing papers and giving talks and being part of organizations and getting clients and all these sorts of things. So, by the way, I mean, any attorney with a lot of clients and a big book of business where the clients are willing to pay what the large law firm charges can always move into large law firms. Maybe not always the best, but if you have business as an attorney, that's always going to make you marketable. So that's a great thing. So, some questions. Sorry about that. I've been talking. Okay, next question. How can I get a summer associate job without top grades? Okay, so that's a good question. If you do want to work in a law firm as part of your career, if you want to get hired by a law firm after you graduate from law school, it's very, very important to work in the summer in another law firm. The same thing that I brought up earlier about working or getting jobs. Any law firm, if you volunteer, if you apply to enough places and you say, I want a summer position, and it's not going to be expensive for them, will hire someone to work there in the summer. So there are literally in every city, thousands of places that you could work, and you can write letters to them and send them all emails and find out who's in charge of hiring and apply to a lot of places. If you don't have top grades, that's something that's going to hurt you if you're trying to get a job with the best law firms. Any good law firm is going to hire the people with the best grades from the best law schools because they can. And so why would they hire someone that doesn't have top grades when they can hire someone with top grades? So that doesn't mean by any stretch of the imagination that you don't have to work as a summer associate somewhere. You just need to apply to a lot of places telling them you'd like a summer job. And if you do that, you will get interviews. Anybody will. So it may not be at the best firms, but at least you'll get experience and you'll have a law firm on your resume. So as a potential law firm attorney, you do need to get a job someplace in the summer, even if you're not getting paid. So it's just very, very important. Law firms will hire people to work there for extra help. It's inexpensive in the summer, but you need to apply to a lot of places. Where do you apply? So if you're going to school, like New York Law School or something in New York City, it's going to be much harder to get a job in New York City, probably, where there's a lot of people applying than it might be if in your hometown. Maybe you're from Syracuse, New York. So you apply to a lot of places in Syracuse because there's not as many people fighting for those types of jobs. But to get a summer job, you don't need to even call it a summer associate position. You can call it a summer job to learn. And, I'm not concerned about compensation and so forth. And you apply to a lot of places that way. And so you just need to be applying to as many places as you can. Okay. Good. What are the best ways to manage work-life balance? What are the best ways to manage work-life balance as a law firm associate? So everything that I talked about in the webinar, which would be making sure that you prioritize your health. So your health needs to really come first. If you don't do that, everything's not going to fall into place, and then work, and then your family. So you have to, as a young attorney, you have to prioritize work, and it has to be important. There's lots of professions, like one of them would be the medical profession, where when you get out of law school, or when you're working in a residency and internship, you might be expected to work 36 hours straight. So anytime you're learning something new, which in a law firm, really your first 5 years, you're learning something new, and you have to dedicate yourself to it in a major way. You're training. So when you're getting training, one of the nicest things about practicing law is you come out of law school and you're paid a lot of money to get trained. And it takes about 5 years to learn any sort of practice area. So, that's a time where you are able to get a lot of work, where you're able to not to be expected to develop business, and where you're learning how to be a good attorney. So you need to work as hard as you can when you're young and you have the energy to learn something, because once you learn something, it's going to be with you throughout your career. So the mistake a lot of people make is they end up they end up going into jobs right out of law school, and they start making work-life balance a priority instead of work, and that meeting their friends and their family and all these things. And when you're young, it shouldn't be your priority. You need to really prioritize work and getting training. And lots of professions do that. I mean, the medical profession is one. And if you want to have longevity in the practice of law, then you need to make that a priority right away. That's not to say you need to go 3,000 hours a year wherever you go. And if that's expected, then you need to find a place, and you can't do it where it's not expected. But just realizing the importance of work, the importance of your career, the importance of training early on, and really making that psychologically something that's important, but making sure that you're always emphasizing your health. Okay, next question. How do I stand out as a first-year associate to get noticed by law firm partners? So the only thing that law firm partners, the biggest thing that they care about when you're young is they care about the quality of work you do. So how careful are you? How likely are you to turn in good assignments? Are you going to get repeat business? So when you are taking assignments from partners, they will give repeat work to people that do the absolute best they can. So you need to make sure your work is as good as it can be. And you need to, now there's all these AI tools that will help you make sure your work's proofread, to make sure you're not missing any legal issues and different things. And so you need to make sure your work is as good as possible. Law firm partners will get each week or each month, they'll get a list of how many hours different associates bill. So consistently having the most hours will help you stand out. But really the enthusiasm you bring to your work, the quality you bring to your work, the dedication you appear to have to your work, and then your ability to get a repeat work from different partners. If you're doing a really good job, people are going to give you repeat work to do. There's no question about it. So making sure you're getting repeat work, working as hard as you can, and then having just a lot of enthusiasm for what you're doing. Okay, next question. What steps can law firms take to improve attorney retention and to reduce lateral attrition? So, if a law firm's trying to increase retention, it's about a lot of times the culture of the firm. So making sure that there's a good culture, which means a lot of times there will be partners that are very, very difficult, and trying to address that situation in terms of, the partners, are the partners there making, are they creating difficulties? The other ways to not put so many demands on individual people. So a lot of times the law firm will not hire, so they won't, to save money or whatever, they won't hire enough people to help the people that are there. So that can help people, not judging people for mistakes too harshly. So when people make mistakes, not making it like the end of the world, making people feel accepted, making people feel appreciated for what they're doing. And those are some of the things that the best law firms do. The best law firms will also do cultural things. So they'll have retreats, or they'll get people together in social situations, and they'll make people feel accepted. They won't make people feel like outsiders. I mean, there's a lot of things like that can help. Okay, the next question. How do I rebuild my confidence as an attorney after losing a major case? You shouldn't be worried about losing a major case. You should take lessons from it. Obviously, attorneys lose cases all the time. It's not your fault. It could be the judge's fault. It could be just how the judge sees things. Maybe the judge didn't see your point of view. There's always appeals, but your confidence should never suffer after losing a major case. It's not something that is anything that may be under your control if you did the absolute best job you can. So everybody loses cases. Attorneys, obviously, you cannot always win every case. Okay, how do I pivot to a non-legal career without wasting my law degree? So lots of very successful people do careers that have nothing to do with practicing law. Barack Obama became an adjunct professor, whatever he was, at the University of Chicago Law School after he graduated from Harvard and was on Harvard Law Review. And Bill Clinton went to Yale Law School and became a professor at University of Arkansas Law School and then became president. I mean, all these people. Joe Biden was at the very last ranked student in his class at Syracuse, and he became president and had a very successful legal career. So lots of people become very successful with law degrees and are able to do other things instead of using their law degree for that. I had people in my family, my great grandfather, his father went to law school and became bankers. I mean, you can do all these different things with a law degree. And a lot of times attorneys with law degrees, because of the pressures of law school and usually the smartest people go to law school. They're able to take those degrees and do all sorts of things with them. They become real estate developers. They become marketers. They start businesses. I mean, anybody can do other things with a law degree. And a lot of times, attorneys, when they go into different industries and stuff, are the most successful. I mean, I've known people that, the Shakey's Pizza was a popular pizza chain in Los Angeles. The person went to law school and failed a bunch of times. People do what I do and become recruiters. I mean, there's all sorts of things you can do with your law degree, that, you're not wasting it. And they'll getting a law degree is something that teaches you how to think and all these things. And there's no reason to not use to have a different career instead of your law degree. And here's just someone that says, no, not a question, but I mean, this is all true. Thank you much. I followed your suggestions, got a great job and worked really hard, and have been a major job for over 2 years. I'm expected to bill over 250 hours a month doing it, but appreciate the webinar. Yeah, I mean, there are people that can bill 250 hours a month and they're able to do it. One thing I would also add that's important, and this is something to think about. So sometimes people will do different types of work, and the work is like play, like they enjoy it. It gives them energy. It doesn't sap their soul. And other people will do work and it will just take away all their energy. They won't like it and it will sap their soul. And so whatever you're doing, you need to be trying to do work you need to be that you're enjoying, and that gives you energy and it makes you happy. And if you're not doing something and it's making you unhappy and it's taking away your energy, meaning you're not getting some sort of lift from doing a good job, then you may be in the wrong practice setting or in the wrong career. This next question, why do so many top performing attorneys leave law firms, and how can law firms prevent this? Well, the top performing attorneys will leave because a lot of reasons. They'll be working with people that are toxic and they won't like it. They will be in a situation where they feel like they can't advance. They will not like the isolation of working in a office with a door closed all the time. They will not like the people that they're working with. They will feel unappreciated. The work will be stuff that they don't want to do. There's just all sorts of things. So how does a law firm prevent that? A law firm can have reasonable hour requirements. A law firm can encourage people. A law firm can accommodate things like working remotely and all these sorts of things. And a law firm can, help, people improve instead of not, and all those sorts of things. But a lot of top performing law firm attorneys will leave law firms because they believe that the large law firm model, which doesn't work for them, is the only way to succeed. What's interesting, and I've brought this up before, but in smaller markets, like, if you're an attorney in a major city like Los Angeles, people really don't care. It's just like, okay, this person's an attorney, or San Francisco. But if you're an attorney in other markets, sometimes people will care. Like, they'll think it's a very big deal that you're an attorney, and you'll be respected and appreciated. And so people's careers in smaller markets often last a very long time, whereas people's careers in larger markets often don't. People that are at the top firms think that's the only option. So they think it's that or nothing. So they never go to smaller law firms, and they just leave the profession entirely. People that, are in consumer facing practice areas. So if you're doing personal injury, you may feel very good when you settle a case and make a lot of money for your client. Or if you're in trust and estates, you may really enjoy that. So sometimes people that work for consumers, the consumers will appreciate the work they're doing, and consumers will often, respect them for the work, and they'll get a lot of positive feedback. But when they work in major firms, they won't get that type of feedback, and that will be something that is just soul draining. Let me just hear. Okay. Next question. I'm a naturally happy person on and off work, and I take what I do very seriously. I have positive people around me, and I'm healthy, gym, sauna, good, clean foods, etc. Those are those who are like dementors. I avoid like the plague as best as I can. I'm a problem solver. Another day I heard another language, received emails in that language, and had to conduct client interviews in that language. So I figured out how to communicate. However, the problem I wasn't able to solve my past employer's inherently miserable disposition, which I soon learned after day 3, despite the positive symptoms you mentioned that I have in place, doing things that keep me grounded. It was still, I'm so drained to be around a person with negative character traits. Are there ways of vetting the person or group before I agree to work there? Yeah, so there are certain firms where there's just a lot of toxicity, and where the people are very toxic, and where it's very difficult to be around them. So if you're in that situation, there's nothing wrong with looking for another job, or trying to avoid the people that are very unpleasant at one firm, and then gravitate towards the people that aren't. But sometimes you will join a firm where that's the case. The culture of a firm really matters a lot. So you have to join a firm with the right culture for you. And I go into law firms all the time, and I encounter firms sometimes where it's just a wonderful culture and where I would be very happy there. And I walk into other firms and I can tell, even just from like sitting in the lobby, like how, unpleasant this culture must be. And so, at least for me, but for other people, it may be pleasant. So you have to find a culture that matches what appeals to you, and how, how that, and how comfortable you'll feel there. Different law firms are composed of different types of people. I mean, there are law firms where everybody's a former college athlete. There are law firms where, where it's all people of primarily one race or one religion. I knew one guy that was an associate in a law firm, and they interviewed some guy, and then all the associates talked about it, were like, everybody here is like Jewish, and, would be uncomfortable with this guy. I mean, it's just, you just can be in different cultures. Some law firms are composed of all people that are all Catholic. I mean, I don't know why that is, but every law firm has its own culture. People have different work styles. Some people are very social, others aren't. I was working with one woman, and she moved to a firm, and when she got there, she discovered that everybody worked with their doors closed and didn't associate and stuff, and she was very uncomfortable with that culture. Some people would be comfortable with that culture. So you need to really think about what the culture of the firm's like. You often can pick it up when you're interviewing, just the way you feel and how the people are acting. And that can be something that, is important as well. So and you should also interview with a lot of places. I mean, a lot of people will take the very first job that's offered to them, And you can do that, of course, and there's nothing wrong if it's the only job you get. But ultimately, you're going to be advanced in the culture depending on how well you integrate in the culture and how, and how you feel there. And every firm has a different culture. If you're working for a solo practitioner, every solo practitioner is going to have a different culture and expectations. Okay, how do you change markets if you're not licensed in another state? Will law firms hire you? Yes, law firms will hire you. You can get jobs in practically every state if you're not licensed there. There's some states that are very difficult to do it, which are California, where the substantial number of lateral or practicing attorneys that take the bar there fail. Florida, they want you to be licensed. Delaware, they want you to be licensed. But if you search on BCG, there's articles about bar reciprocity. So you should take a look at some of those articles about where you can, other states you can work in. Law firms in other states will hire you depending upon the laws of supply and demand. So what does that mean? It means that if there are not a lot of attorneys like you, then they're more likely to hire you. I recently had a girl start yesterday that was like an antitrust litigator in Louisiana, and she got a job in San Francisco even without the bar doing antitrust litigation. So it depends on your practice area. It depends on the state. The firms that are most competitive are going to be more likely to hire people that are actually from that state, because why would you hire someone relocating when you can hire someone locally? So that's the case. But the more unique your practice area is, and the more likely, specialized, and there's not a lot of people like you, the more likely you'll get hired. Patent attorneys, for example, get hired all over the country. I mean, that's a federal practice area. It's not, they want people to be licensed to the bar there, but it's not necessary for you to always have to be licensed. Okay, let's see here, different states. Okay. Just give me 1 second. Okay, what are your thoughts and advice on U.S. attorneys applying for in-house positions overseas, like in the EU or overseas? Okay, so U.S. attorneys are kind of an interesting people to try to get jobs. So it's difficult for U.S. attorneys to get jobs even in law firms because they typically will be hired to do things like white collar litigation. When they're coming out of the U.S. attorney's office, they often have several years of experience. And so they don't have business, and so they need to be plugged into a law firm that will have existing work for them to do without business. So it's difficult to get jobs in law firms, but doing some sort of criminal work, not at large law firms or smaller law firms, criminal defense is kind of the natural thing that U.S. attorneys do when they're trying to get jobs. So what about applying to in-house jobs overseas, in the EU or overseas? Well, if you're in another country, like the EU or overseas, and you can hire people that are admitted solicitors in England, for example, why would you hire someone from overseas when you can hire someone that's already there? It doesn't make a lot of sense if you don't understand the legal framework and you don't have any experience in it. So if you are 15 years out of the U.S. Attorney's Office and you want to walk into some sort of litigation job in the EU working for a company, like you haven't been admitted, you don't have experience in that legal system, so it's no different than a first year type of attorney. You're not going to understand criminal law there. So why would someone overseas hire you if you want to work in-house? Like, what is the value that you're bringing? I'm not really sure of that, because even in the US, if you're a litigation attorney at a major law firm and you're 10 years out and you want to work in-house, I mean, there's not a lot of companies that hire litigators. Most of them hire people with experience in corporate related work, for example, or sometimes real estate or patent law. But why would they hire someone in-house in a foreign country? So can you get a job in a foreign country overseas in the EU with a company? Yes, of course you can, but it's going to be very, very difficult because you're competing with people that are already there. So the big rule to remember about applying to jobs and finding positions is everything's about the law of supply and demand. So are there people like you that the law firm or company can find that are better, and is it easy for them or is it harder? So just as it's very competitive to get in-house jobs in the United States, people can take people to spend years doing it. It's even more competitive if you're not in that legal market to be able to get a job. So people make the mistake all the time of thinking that their law degree will entitle them to work in all these different locations. And it can be extremely difficult if you don't have the training and experience and in that legal system, even if you're trying to go in-house as a U.S. attorney, why would someone hire someone in-house to be their in-house attorney when they already have people in that market that are there? I mean, the people that have experience in that practice area aren't just doing criminal related work. Why would a company hire someone that typically did criminal defense or whatever, I mean, criminal prosecution, to work in-house when the company doesn't have existing criminal things pending that it needs to do? It has different types of work. So when you make decisions about going in the government, when you make decisions about going in-house, everybody should realize that, especially going to the government, can be very, very limiting. It's very difficult for all these people that are losing their jobs in Washington, D.C. right now, that are attorneys with these various government offices, to get positions. They're trying to get positions in law firms. They're trying to do all these sorts of things, but trying to get a position in a law firm when you're coming from the government is extremely difficult, because you're competing with people that are already in law firms for the same jobs, that have chosen that practice setting for their long-term career. Anytime you choose a practice setting other than a law firm, for example, you're sending a message to law firms that I do not like this practice setting. And so why would they hire someone that doesn't like that practice setting as opposed to someone that does? So you have that. And then going in-house, like, why would someone hire someone that doesn't have the correct experience to go in-house? And so, all these things can be limiting. It doesn't mean you can't get a job. You have to apply to a lot of places, but you have to, realize of how limiting certain career decisions can be. Even to, the experience you get has to be marketable to the employer. You wouldn't want to hire someone to take care of your kids whose experience was as a garbage collector. You would probably hire someone that has experience doing that, and any rational person would. So that's how employers think too, which is unfortunate. That's kind of how it works. Okay, this person says, I was working at Tim Hortons, which, by the way, for everyone, is a Canadian food chain, from August 26, or restaurant chain, from August 26, 2022 until June of 2023. It's almost a year. While I was taking a law clerk program, I graduated recently in October 23, 2024, and I've been applying to all Department of Jobs. How much chance do I have of finding a job without problems? Which job should I be applying to, and what should I be doing? Okay, so there's certain classes of employers that will always have jobs. Their insurance defense, personal injury, all these different types of people, workers' compensation. Most consumer-facing practice areas, which means you're working for individuals, will always have a need for people that have passed the bar. So you just need to be applying to a lot of places. You don't want to be applying to the jobs that are most competitive, and you also have to realize that you're better off applying to places that don't have jobs saying that I'm interested in working there. So, applying to places that currently have openings is going to be more competitive than applying to places that don't have openings. Another thing that's important is, you have to decide what practice setting you want. So it's easier a lot of times to get jobs in state government, whatever, Social Security Administration, federal government. I mean, there's different types of jobs you can get. But just remembering that you don't always want to apply to jobs, because your experience is not always going to be the best, and so you need to apply to firms that don't have openings, where the only applicant, and they can take a risk on you. So again, anyone can get a job. In California, there are 1,000+ cities. In New York, same thing. So just applying to markets where there's not a lot of applicants, then applying to firms that don't have openings in those markets. And so you can always get a job in a law firm. There are thousands and 200,000+ law firms in the country. So why wouldn't you be able to get a job? Anybody can get a job, but you have to avoid everyone watching this. The biggest mistake you can always make is just applying to places that have openings, because if you're not the best applicant, you're not going to get the job. If you're the only applicant for something and you seem very enthusiastic, then you will get a job. Okay, next question. I'm a night owl and stress eater. I find it really difficult to wake up early. I prefer to work late. By the time I get home, I unwind with binge watching, streaming services, and snacking. before I know it, I'm running late in the morning again, no matter how many times I reset old patterns emerge and I'm drained. Should I find a position accepts me as working late or break the cycle? Yeah, you need to break the cycle. I mean, you need to not watch TV and binge eat at night. You need to, you need to apply yourself to your job, and you need to be have FaceTime when other people are working. So I don't know of a lot of jobs that would accommodate some firms. If you don't have to be in the office and available during the day, I guess you can do that. But it just seems, you have to develop better sleeping habits in order to break that cycle. I don't see why you would want to continue with that cycle. And instead of binge watching TV and snacking, and why wouldn't you try to work, and why wouldn't you try to get onto a better sleep cycle? And if that's impossible for you, then maybe there's prescription medication you can take, or if this is just something that's deeply ingrained in your psychology, I mean, I don't know, in your biology, then maybe trying to do a different career would be a good idea. But these sorts of things, if you were hiring someone to work for you, I don't know if you would accept that for an employee. So you have to think about, what's acceptable for me. What can I do and what does an employer need? Because if you're working for someone else, you need to do what they want, not necessarily what you want. Okay, next question. How do I deal with people talking shit in the office about everything except work? So you avoid those people. People that are talking poorly all the time are people that aren't going to go anywhere. People will pick partners and things will know who's talking poorly. If people are talking poorly, it's going to affect your view of your job in the world. So you need to avoid those sorts of people. Anybody that's solid intellectually or emotionally, anybody that's like a solid person with good character will avoid those sorts of people. You don't want to participate. There's no benefit to participating with people that are negative. It's only going to drag you down. It's only going to make you associated with people that are negative. When I started BCG, two of my first hires, one woman who worked at a previous firm for 8 years, the other worked at a previous firm for 16 years. They both ended up staying at BCG the same amount of time. During that time, I hired a lot of negative people. Those negative people would gossip, they'd create issues, and they would be unhappy, and they would all associate together, and they would think that the company was horrible when these people were positive and maintain their balance. So maintaining balance, not surrounding yourself with negative people, and realizing that any time you spend with people that are negative like that, it's going to hurt you. Why would you want to hurt your own psychology and how you feel about yourself and your job by associating with people like that? They offer you absolutely nothing but unhappiness and career failure. So you need to avoid them. Okay, next question. I did my placement at a law firm. Good thing I did my hours and left because they were keeping a lot of things from me. So I never returned back. That's right. It's a bad environment. Okay. Yeah. So that's good. So you should not have to worry, if you work in a law firm, then you don't like the firm for whatever reason, and you leave, that's something we'll talk about in a second. But you left because there's a bad environment. The most important thing for attorneys is you should never, if you can avoid being unemployed, quitting jobs is bad. So you try to find another job, because if you do quit a job, you're going to be competing with people that do have jobs for the same jobs. So why would that makes you a bigger risk. It makes it look like someone that may have lost their job because of bad work. It makes it look like someone that might quit their job, just suddenly quit their job. It makes it look like you're someone that can't get along in an environment. So you're much better off keeping your job and finding another job while you're still there, because your odds of getting a better position are going to be like 5-10 times if you keep your job. So everybody should always try to keep their job before looking for a new job. And if you don't do that, it can create a lot of issues. So I think this is the last question. So if you have any additional questions, you can ask them right now. I may have one or two more. Let me just see here. So any questions? Okay. So thank you. Very informative information. I've used your advice in the past and has helped. I have two questions. Do you have any literature recommendation on the subject for 3-year attorneys? I've been at my new job for a month. My boss told me I'm doing a good job. We do civil case document review all day, court appearances and motions. However, I've seen attorneys who've been here over 9 months work 12 to 15 hours a day to keep up with the work, but don't work any weekends. Any advice? Okay, so first question. Let me just see here. Okay, so I have a lot of webinars, like probably done hundreds, and also a lot of articles and things on BCG. So those are things that I would read. Those will help you. There's about all sorts of different issues like this one too. So just kind of doing a deep dive into different types of material I have, I think could be helpful for you. If these people are working 12 to 15 hours a day, that's a lot. It's very, very difficult, but they don't work weekends, so that's good. If you enjoy the work that you're doing and you're going to work 50 hours a week, I don't think that's the end of the world. But if you're not, then, that's not, but you have to find an environment where you can handle the workload and where you're happy. So I guess that's my advice. Let me see here. One more question. Okay, next question. How can I improve my billable hours without burning out as an attorney? So how do you improve your billable hours? So one of the reasons that people burn out sometimes is they don't like the work that they're doing. So many times doing work that you enjoy more, getting work from people that are doing things that are interesting to you as opposed not. So if you do that, you're going to do much better. You need to write down all of your time. So if you're thinking a lot about something, then you can think about it while you're not in front of a computer. That could be billable time. You need to, like I said earlier, you need to build in exercise and different things and get perspective that will help you not burn out. I used to, there's people that sometimes will take a walk. They will make a walk, like 20-minute walk mandatory at some point during the day. People do all sorts of things that enable them to improve their billable hours without burning out. And so, those are some of my suggestions. Exercising, and obviously in your health, doing work that's interesting to you, working with people that you like, that, if you can work in groups and things, you like those people, that kind of can give you a lift. And then, making sure that you're, the biggest thing is doing work you're interested in, because you're doing work you're interested in, you won't mind the work. And so, and your billable hours do not always need to be the very top billable hours wherever you're at. If you're doing good work and your hours are, whatever in the middle or not the biggest lower end, then you're not going to lose your job if your work's good. Let's see. Okay, what are the best ways for attorneys to manage client expectations in high pressure cases? Well, different clients will have different expectations, but if you're saying a case, which is, a litigation or something, you need to be doing everything that you can for the client. If something's going to trial, you need to be prepared. You need to be really working your absolute hardest and doing the best work you can. So that would be, and if you have those client expectations, then that's what the client expects. And the larger the client, the bigger expectations they will have, because big clients spend a lot of money on legal fees. So they obviously want to hire the absolute best attorneys that they can. They need the most dedicated people. And if you don't like that, then you can work at, on small work for smaller clients, not the large. Okay, next question. What are some time management tips that you found have worked? So there's always time when you can take personally. Friday afternoons after 5, a lot of people leave offices. You're just making sure that you take time out for yourself in little increments. Even an hour a day off of work can make a huge difference. So you have to make certain things a priority. It could be, exercise needs a priority. Time with your family at certain times of the week needs to be a priority. So building those things into your career, is really important. And, just so you understand, a lot of what I've been talking about today is just kind of what large law firms demand. And most law firms, the substantial majority all over the world, country, don't demand, this incredible number of hours. It's just all about the size clients you're representing, how much you're getting paid, the size of the firm. So managing your time just means having certain things that are non-negotiable. So, certain times of the week you spend with your firm. Keep talking about presidents. Barack Obama made a priority when he was president to have dinner with his family every night. People, Donald Trump plays golf. People do different things where they block, where they, set aside time on a consistent basis to do things. And so you just need to block out time and make it almost like non-negotiable. Like if you have a case or something going to trial or some important transaction, you obviously can't do that, but you build in different things into your week and you find time. Okay. Next question would be, are you going to upload this webinar? Yeah, they're usually uploaded within a week or so. So this will be on the website as well. And this is a very popular topic. So I hope everyone learned a lot today, and I will be back next week. Thanks again.